I just want to start off by saying I love the Dune fandom, right? I think the Dune fandom is like one of the best fandoms that I've been a part of. Like everyone, I think the Dune fandom is so smart, so thoughtful. You know, I covered a bunch of Game of Thrones as well as my content. I love those books. And the Game of Thrones fandom is one of the most toxic fandoms I've ever encountered in my entire life. Some of the meanest people ever. Love you guys too, but like, so the Dune fandom is great. Yeah, but I do think that we have a little bit. Some of us might have a little bit of what I like to call the Rick and Morty syndrome, which is like Dune is only for smart people. Like it's like yeah. So I even have to stop myself from kind of doing that because Dune is not necessarily like a beginner's science fiction book, but it's also not like, you know, House of Leaves, which is like one of the most difficult books to read ever because you're like deciphering everything actively as you're reading it. I think Dune is more accessible than people realize. That's not to say it doesn't have layers upon layers upon layers upon layers of meaning everywhere. But it does bother me when people kind of like, oh, you're too stupid to get Dune, or like you won't get this. Because I think that anybody can read Dune, and it is for everybody. It sold so many copies because a lot of people have read it, and I think it makes you smarter when you read it. You don't have to get everything immediately. Totally. And I think, so I guess if that's a bone to pick, that's it.
I'm also guilty of that when people go, I don't like Dune, and quietly to myself, I'm like, they probably didn't get it. They probably didn't understand it.
Yeah.
Because if you understood it, you'd like it. I mean, come on. How do you not?
Yeah. Haha. Okay, everyone say their IQ on 3. 1, 2.
Higher than yours. Because I like Dune, all right? Similar, I think this happens in every fandom, but I think it's a particularly egregious in the Dune fandom. And maybe you've run into this as well, but like, I'm guilty of this. I'll just be upfront. The Frank Herbert can do no wrong hero worship of Frank Herbert as this like monolithical figure. Like, I think when you read Dune and you recognize this is about the danger of charismatic leaders and the idea of giving people carte blanche who you're just like, you're great, you can do no wrong, everything's great, is that's like one of the themes of Dune. And then I do that for Frank, where anytime someone criticizes him or says something like, oh yeah, he was like an asshole, or he was, you know, terrible in some of the stuff his son has written about him, I'm like, I want to jump to his defense. Why? I'm not on his payroll. I'm not his like defense attorney. It's dumb, and I definitely do it. Like, he was a kick-ass author. He writes amazing sci-fi, just amazing books. But that doesn't mean that he was a saint, and it doesn't like mean that we should excuse him for his bad takes. So I'm like, it's funny to me that I am aware of that as something that the Dune fandom does sometimes with Frank, and then I do it. I absolutely do it too.
So ironically, you would say that hero worship is one of the problems with the Dune fandom. That's very ironic.
Yeah, I mean,
I do see that.
Yeah, I think it happens, and you're right. It's like there's the sort of elitism of like you're not good enough to be a Dune fan, or like I'm better than you because I'm a Dune fan. And then I think also there's the like, because Dune is a perfect thing, and if you don't like it, you're not smart enough to understand it, and here's why you're wrong for being affected by this text or being affected by that.
Go watch Star Wars, loser.
Exactly. Yeah, just
Leo, this reminds me of a tweet that stuck with me when I saw it one time from, I believe, Cole Kuchna, who's the host and creator of Dissect, which is an amazing podcast that breaks down music. And I don't remember the tweet verbatim, but it said something along the lines of, like, I find it funny when people are annoyed when artists like show up late or unprepared or aren't in the mood today or blah blah blah, because like that is what makes them artists, is like so much of their work is a part of who they are, and their emotions and their lived experience is in the art. And so when they like don't show up and do the art for the corporate business that needs it done by a deadline, people are like, what are you doing? You need to do your job. And they're like, I'm an artist, it has to feel right, or et cetera, XYZ, whatever the reason might be. And I kind of think of this like hero worship idea, this like Frank Herbert or anyone you love. You know, we see like stan culture being such a thing these days.
Yeah,
but
totally. Yeah.
Like any celebrity or anyone that you love, like the reality is like they are still humans.
Yeah.
They still must be held accountable for their rights and their wrongs. You know, celebrate their rights, but call them out for their wrongs, and understand that there's nuance there. Like a person can both do and create great things and also believe horrible, like unconscionable things at the same time. Like those two thoughts can exist at the same time within one person. And I like to think Leto too would agree with me. Like he has always we've talked about on our book clubs how Leto talks about how like biographies of people can never capture the essence of a human life because like it just distills it down to a narrative.
Yeah.
And you try to plant someone's life into a narrative that makes sense, but like human beings don't make sense inherently.
Absolutely.
So this is me getting on a bit of a soapbox, but your note here about the hero worship and Frank made me think of that tweet, which made me think of like art comes from not necessarily quote unquote broken people, but like messy people, because all people are messy and art is messy and it's an expression of human blah blah blah. You know, like we could get philosophical about that, but I think that applies here too.
Yeah.